I'd like to welcome all of you to our Community Redevelopment Agency meeting for June the 2nd, 2022. With that, I'll call this meeting to order. Could we all please stand together for a pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Member Urban
Here.
and Member Loading has an excused absence for the record. Vice Chair Davis.
Here.
Member Trace.
Here.
Member Askew.
Here.
Member Matheny. Here. Chair Blackwell.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is approval of our minutes from the August 7th meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to our minutes? If not, could I entertain a motion for acceptance?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion from Member Davis and a second from Member Askew.
No. Trace.
Member Trace. All those in favor say aye.
All right. Aye.
Any opposed? And it so carries unanimously. Brings us to new business. The first item is financial statements and an independent audit report by Purvis Gray.
Mayor?
Yes.
Could I have Chief Miller just do a quick
Sure. You
update?
go right
on
ahead.
the storm event, please? Thank you.
You'll indulge us for just a moment?
Thank you.
Evening, Mayor, Council. Jason Miller, Fire Chief. Just want to give you a quick brief update on L91. It's a little storm cell that's blowing up over the Yucatan Peninsula right now. It was originally Hurricane Agatha that came across Mexico. It's one of the rare storms that actually made it all the way across, looking like it may reform into a new storm once it hits the Gulf of Mexico, which if it does form a storm, it will become Tropical Storm Alex. Current projections are we'll start getting some pretty good rain, probably Friday night going into Saturday, all day Saturday and into Sunday. We're looking 2 to 3 inches over that time period. As we've been looking at it, the track has we've bumped it a little bit more north every single time. So we're still monitoring it as it appears right now. We're not going to be doing an EOC activation or anything. However, I caution when I say that because as history has shown over and over, the 3 days before it makes landfall, the storms tend to erupt and develop quite readily. So with that, you might see some warnings and watches issued for our coastal neighbors on the west coast tomorrow. There will be some probably flood washes issued. They're predicting currently down by the Miami area upwards of 8 inches of rain, going around 2.5 to 3 here in Central Florida. I have checked with all of our departments today. All the ditches are hurricane ready. The water levels are down in the ponds, so we're looking good in that front. We do have one lift station that may be a little problematic, but we're taking steps to take care of that. And both ourselves and the county are just in a wait and see pattern at this point. We've kind of done some maintenance and housekeeping items as far as outside securing of some items, but we're hoping this will just be a minor inconvenience and a rain event over one of the days this weekend.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We certainly would agree. We hope it'll be a minor incident, not a major one. Does anyone on the council have any questions or comments you'd like to make?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Miller. At this time, we'll receive our report from Purvis Gray.
Oh, yes. There we go. So today I'm joining you. Thank you for having me. This is kind of the final phase of the CRA's audit for the year ending September 30th, 2021, which is the presentation to the CRA board. And here's just a quick slide of the leadership of the audit team. Tim Westgate was unable to join me today. Myself, I'm Matthew Godot. I'm the senior audit manager for the engagement. And we also included Mike Sandstrom, who's an IT senior audit manager that we use as part of the audit. And that's just the leadership of the audit team. So just kind of briefly discuss of what we are actually engaged to perform, because the term audit can mean a lot of different things. The primary engagement is actually a financial audit of the financial statements for the CRA. for the year ending September 30th, 2021. We also, though, perform an engagement to issue a report on the internal controls and compliance affecting the financial reporting, which is a requirement of the rules of the Auditor General for governmental funds. We also issue 2 separate reports on compliance, one over investments and the other one over CRA compliance with Florida statute, as well as rules of the Auditor General management letter. So just to kind of touch on some of the audit reports, the first one, which is on page 1 of your, if you look at a bound one or a PDF, on page 1 is the independent auditor's report. This is where we issue our opinion on the financial statements, that they are fairly presented in all material respects. Happy to present again this year that the CRA received a clean opinion, which is an unmodified opinion, the highest level of assurance that can be offered for any attestation engagement. The other report, as mentioned earlier, the internal control and compliance. There was no material weaknesses over internal control or compliance with any laws and regulations, and no instances of noncompliance related to those matters, so that is also a favorable report. As to the examination reports that are issued over compliance with Florida Statute 218-415, 218-415 is the compliance with the investment policy established by the state's Florida statute. Since the CRA is using the pooled funding, which is the same function that the city uses, it's also in compliance as the city was as well. And also an examination report on Florida Statute 163387, which oversees the compliance aspects of a CRA audit. We found no issues either in that compliance as well during our review. Management letters, comments. We had no findings of a deteriorating financial condition, no compliance matters, as I mentioned earlier. We do have one management letter comment related to the CRA budget, which I have a slide that briefly touches on that a little later. Just the significant event and financial highlights. The main thing to see if you look at the financial statements for the CRA this year is the CRA decreased its fund balance in the current year. The fund balance decreased $1.46 million for the final ending fund balance as of 9/30/21, making it $1.1 million in the fund balance for the CRA. Overall, actually, the revenues were actually slightly up as expected for the CRA with increasing property values. However, the cause of the decrease of the fund balance was really the transfer that was made over to the capital projects fund related to the downtown revitalization phase 2. That transfer was made during the fiscal year. Just a few other audit matters, and we would be required to disclose to you, and we do have a separate letter that's provided to the board for a governance letter. If we had any issues with management or any issues during our audit or anything like that that we'd need to bring to your attention, we'd bring that to your attention in the letter, and I would also discuss it here, but I'm happy to announce that there's nothing to mention related to those items. We had no difficulties in performing the audit and no material audit findings or audit adjustments. So just one last thing is the other audit matters. We didn't have any management letters last year. We did have some recommendations and discussion items that we kind of presented during our presentation for the CRA last year. All of those were actually just kind of a heads up on things to be looking out for. All those were addressed except for the one related to the budget, and that's just the Florida Statute 1603876B requires that any adopted budget or amendments to the CRA budget has to be sent to the county within 10 days of the adoption. During our testing, we did note that the budgets were submitted to the county. They just were not within, all of them were not within that time frame. And that was something new that occurred. This statute actually went into place for this fiscal year ending, so this is the first time that you'd have this kind of comment as well. And just briefly, I'm not going to go into depth, but there are some future accounting pronouncements on the horizon. The first one for leases, this will also be affecting the city. We don't expect there to be any direct effect on the CRA, but there may be some indirect effects just depending on how this affects the city. GASB 87 for leases is effective for the year end September 30th, 2022. GASB 96, which is similar to 87, is the following year. That one just relates to IT arrangement agreements, and then some other things we don't think also are going to affect, but the replacement of LIBOR terminology for any investment or any debt out there, which I don't think the city has any that's related to that. And then GASB 94 and GASB 91. So those are all on the horizon for 2023. Nothing really major that we think is going to affect, but we like to just bring those to everybody's attention. And that just concludes the audit presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has anything on related to the audit.
Thank you very much. Council Member Askew.
Yeah, the Gatsby one, correct me if I'm wrong, that's basically anything that the city owns in a CRA area that they plan on leasing or doing some kind of future arrangement what has to do with leases.
Correct. So GASB 87, essentially what it's doing is that in the past, you had two types of leases. You had capital leases, which you would basically own a portion of the asset and could have an offsetting liability of it. You also had operating leases, which you didn't record the asset up front. You just paid rental expense or whatever it is as you go. This standard requires essentially all of those leases to now be brought onto your books.
Right.
So you could have, if you do have any lease arrangements for any particular right-of-use assets within the district, those would be recorded as right-of-use assets on the financial statements.
Okay, yeah, we own some houses through the city. I just want to make sure we're, from this day forward, moving.
Yeah, and, so any leases that are entered into, those would need to be considered as well.
Okay. I have another question because you are in the audits and things like that. We have a, I guess it would be considered a vendor or a support group. It's a nonprofit, Main Street, and we make them get a audit based under the Florida statute, which when if I read it, it doesn't state that I have to make the people I pay get an audit. It states that the municipality that supports that CRA has to audit, or the CRA has to audit itself.
Yeah, I'm not aware of necessarily nonprofits that are vendors of a CRA being
Right.
required to obtain an audit based on Florida statute. I don't know if there's anything internally that I've missed, maybe that the city or the CRA requires that aspect. But the Florida statute that's being referenced there specifically just requires special districts, which the CRA is one, to obtain an audit if you receive or expend over $100,000. So that's what's really
Sure.
triggering the audit for the CRA. We've had some past discussions related to the expenditures related to nonprofits, as long as they are within the CRA's plan and what the CRA is there to designed to do, that those expenditures are completely fine. And we audit those expenditures on our side for compliance and for financial reporting purposes.
Okay, so we don't have to make them audit. I asked the same question to the president of the CRA down in Fort Myers. They said that's, normally they don't have to do that unless we make a special
Yeah.
thing that, oh, we want them audited.
And I do
for
think
some
maybe
reason.
there might have been something in the past, maybe, I think.
Right.
I've heard some more, something on the city side that required that. But I know nothing on the state side for the CRA.
So,
audits.
yeah, I think it's going to end up being a choice of all ours, but every year we make a small nonprofit that's actually created this CRA group to pay an audit fee, which for them, I'm not sure what that'd be. Probably, Bill would probably know better than I would, but probably $8,000, $10,000, which is, almost all what they get in the big scheme of things. So I think that we need to look at that and go, do we need to make them? Because if we make them do it, or anybody else we end up paying, do we have to make them do an audit as well? So I'm just kind of throwing it out there. I just think every year it turns into a little bit of a problem because we put out a contract to them and we try to hold them to, you need to be audited, you need to do all these different things. Not that I think everybody needs to have some sort of audit, a W-2 from the government, something like that, which I think they give that to them.
Just from our perspective of auditing the CRA, though, the main thing we would just need to be able to see support of compliance with the CRA's plan of that expenditure being paid to that nonprofit.
Shows-
And there is, in that Florida statute, somewhere the 163, there is something about payments from cities to nonprofits specifically, saying that the city still needs to maintain control to ensure that those expenditures by the nonprofit, if you're not reimbursing them for specific expenditures, that those expenditures the nonprofit is incurring are within line of the CRA. So there is some things, but that would be on the CRA's audit side, that we would request that support from the city, and the city should obtain that from their vendor if required.
Right, so that would be us to come up with that specific rule that you're talking about in those two situations. If we give them, I'm not sure what we give them now, 75,000, something like that. So if we give them that amount of money, we can state for what it could be. It could be for the salary, or it could be for this or that.
Yeah, as long as those expenditures are in line with the CRA as well as in line with any other requirements of the CRAs within the Florida
Right,
statute.
and I think we're already, they give them all tax information, their budget, what they spent their money on, things like that. So I guess if we ever did get rid of this specific contract, we would just have to state in there exactly what we're looking for. So we don't, this isn't on your side, it's probably more towards the city manager's side. It turns into be a struggle every year to get this contract signed when really nothing has changed. So I'm just trying to make it easier for them. and less costly for them. And I'm not sure we should pick up the price or they should pick up the price. So I don't know. I just kind of opened the floor. You kind of sparked some memories there. So thank you.
Member Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. Two quick questions. GASB 87, we don't have anything, no leases that fall within that, right? The CRA?
Since that's effective for your year ending coming up, I haven't reviewed any of the financials related to that. As of now, I'm not aware of any that would be in the CRA.
No,
that would be
the
affected.
CRA doesn't have any property that the CRA leases.
Right, that's what
The
I was
city
thinking.
owns property within the CRA area that
Right,
the
which is
city
what-
leases.
That's where I think the law is a little different. If it's in the CRA and the city owns it, that's, I think, where that
But-
law gets tricky.
But the CRA is not the leasing entity,
We're not the
Not
owner
the
nor
lessor.
the landlord.
Yeah.
correct? So that's what I'm thinking. I don't think we have anything that falls under.
Yeah, the
GASB
CRA
87.
itself would have to be the leaseor or the leasee to be effective under 87 for the
Right.
CRA.
And then, my original question, you had made note that we submitted it to the county, but we didn't comply within the 10 days. How long did we actually take to?
I don't recall. I know it was before the end of the fiscal year that all the budgets were all sent to the county, but I don't remember the specific days. I don't think they were extremely close. I don't know if, Jeff, if you.
Sorry, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development Manager. So staff did send it within the 10-day period. However, we could not find the evidence that we sent it within the 10-day period. I think in fact, we put in a couple of placeholders so that from now on, there will be several people copied when we do the transmittal, as well as hard copies for the future.
Was it emailed the last time?
Yes.
But we couldn't find the,
We could not. In fact, we also reached out to the county manager's office to see if they could as well locate it, and we could not.
okay.
But we have put in measures in place for the future.
So how do you know you sent it?
My word.
But we eventually complied.
Right,
No harm, no foul.
right. We did send it to them.
Okay, all right. That's.
And
all I
I'm
had.
sorry, just as a last note, we did do a reconfirmation with the county, which we did provide the auditors during the time period. So they are using that reconfirmation as, yes, we sent it, but not within the 10-day period.
Yeah, no problem.
Member Matheny.
Thank you. It's interesting rabbit hole that member Askew went down. I'm open to actually understanding if it's required, not required, if we're, every nonprofit that I've ever been on, we've had to audit, which has been a big, big struggle on the boards that I've been on to find people to audit nonprofits and not charge an exorbitant amount of money. But every nonprofit I've been on has gotten money from governments. So I don't know if that's what triggers it is, if you get over, you said $100,000 or whatever, but I would be open to, I don't think this is the conversation for here, but I would be open to understanding that better for our contracts.
Mr. Manzares?
Yeah, and so as I recall, and I've been trying to find the last version of it, the latest versions, particularly with the Main Street organization, did not require an audit that we're talking about. The issue arose, and there's two things. First of all, I think the comment about the 100,000 had to do with the CRA, the value that the CRA collects and expends, not what it gives to it. That's what triggers the audit requirement. So your budget, your revenues, your expenditures are over 100,000. That triggers your audit. However, the issue came in, as you recall, with regard to being able to verify and certify that those CRA funds that were collected, that were being spent essentially by this agency, were being used for purposes consistent with the adopted CRA plan. That's the issue. So it's an expenditure piece from the CRA side to make sure whoever they're giving the money to use is using it for the same purposes. That's what was contained in that agreement, and frankly should be in any agreement you have with any large vendor, not vendor, but partner that you're supporting. We, as the CRA, you as the CRA board members, have an obligation to make sure that the money is being spent in accordance with the redevelopment plan. There was some confusion early on about whether a full-fledged audit was required. I think we worked through that eventually. Now, as I recall, all we're asking from the Main Street organization is essentially a working plan or program plan as to what they're going to use, what they're going to be doing, and what they're going to be using the money for. I think we talked about it includes unaudited financial statements that shows this is what I consider basically ledger sheets saying this is what we spent our money, this is where it went on. So I think that's the extent of what we're requiring, and unless this board directs us otherwise, I think that's how it's gonna be included in the future. Perfect. But it doesn't specifically require an audit. There was some talk about it at one time, and there was a price tag of several $1,000s, but I don't think that ever materialized. Thank you. Right, Bill?
I think so.
I guess that addressed your issues, Mr.
Yes,
Sturdy.
thank you.
Any other questions? Is there any, for the record, public comment? If there's not, could I have a motion for the adoption of the report as presented by Purvis?
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion for Councilmember Askew and a second from Councilmember Trace or Davis.
One of us.
One of us. A second from Councilmember or Board Member Davis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And it carries unanimously.
Again, Antoinette Forbes, Economic Development Manager. Excuse me. So this evening I wanted to be able to provide you with an update to the CRA community policing camera purchase. If you recall, in 2021, we re-engaged the St. Cloud Police Department to provide enhanced community policing, particularly associated with the Entertainment District Overlay Amendment, which allowed for open container use. That agreement was approved back in August 5th of 2021. And part of that agreement said that not only would they provide enhanced policing services, but they would also purchase and install closed camera TV equipment in the downtown district to prevent crime, conduct investigations, and aid in apprehension of individuals committing crimes. The dollar amount was $50,000 for covert and overt video surveillance and $14,000 for 2 license plate readers. These are one-time reimbursements that were supposed to be purchased within the first year. The police are now at the point that they would like to make that purchase. They have provided a comprehensive, excuse me, a comprehensive detail of the cameras that they intend to purchase and, in fact, where they intend to purchase it. And we, in fact, have a member from the police department who can explain what this graph means. It's basically the location of where the cameras intend to go.
Detective Justin Ziegler, the police department and television. And so what you're going to see, there are about 13 sites throughout downtown we would propose to place cameras. 13 of those are going to be over. You can see the cameras and they're 360-degree field of view, and they also have pan, tilt, and zoom capabilities. Also, we're proposing, since there's been new technology and since this was put out, 5 license plate reading cameras, and we're getting them at a reduced cost as well and installing them and maintaining them ourselves. So they would be placed on 13th Street for traffic that's coming into the entertainment district, and then also on 10th Street. You'll note on the map anywhere in yellow, that's where those cameras would be. Anywhere that you see the purple dots, that's going to be where the PTZ overt cameras would be for that area. And then the blue dots are just transmission methods of how we're getting it back into the infrastructure as well.
Any questions? Questions or comment?
I do.
Councilmember Thiene.
Thank you. I'm going to trust you because you're the expert on this.
Yes, ma'am.
I can't really tell the differentiation on the dots on here, but I wanted to ask you, it said, and I don't really know, I guess it was highlighted just to point out some terms. It's not that anything has changed. Is that what that is, just to highlight? But it says in here that except as may be prohibited in accordance with active investigation, the city agrees to provide CRA with access to the video from the cameras. Just made me wonder, like, how long are you saving the data that you're gathering? Because I know, like, in my discussions in my job, like, the county has all these cameras on 192 or on all these intersections, but they don't record. You know, so it's because they would be constantly inundated with people like, I was in a crash on here, and you need to give me a copy of
Right.
this, give me a copy, plus all the requirements to store the data. You
We're
know.
maintaining 30 days with the Fusus system that we bought before.
Okay.
Everything's being kept on that system, and so we maintain for 30 days.
Okay, so when you maintain it, then you're gonna be susceptible to like subpoenas or whatever.
We will,
asking
and we're
for
happy
data.
to comply. Our records department's ready and has that available for them as
Okay.
well.
Say it becomes a public record at the time that the active investigation is over. So, but many of those documents will be kept longer than that as part of an active investigation.
Sure, I
So
just
they're
mean it's like
downloaded stories.
someone stole my purse last Tuesday, and I'm like, hey, do you have a camera that picked that up? And then they're gonna come and kind of.
We're going to store that video anyway as evidentiary value if that's indeed on there.
Yeah, but I think in your scenario, if there's no complaint filed or they want to do it, they're going to have to get that video or ask for
Within
that video
30 days.
within 30 days.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
probably pretty commonplace.
And there's some exceptions to that. If it's surveillance video, there are exemptions to us having to get, like, for instance, City Hall.
Yeah,
if
there's
it's-
security, there's plenty of exemptions in the public records law related to security issues and,
Sure.
you know, things that rated for the city hall, the water treatment plants and those kind of things, but for those cameras. But I don't think you were just curious about how
Yeah,
long
I'm
we
just
hold.
curious because I know like the data requirements and stuff, but you know, I don't know if council, maybe Mr. Urban hasn't been to your setup that you have in the police department is pretty amazing, state of the art, cutting edge, and he's one of the architects of it. So that's why I say I trust your vision for the cameras and.
And part of what's in this proposal as well is to buy the computer platform that stores that data as well and does analytics on it.
Awesome.
So that's all included in the cost of this.
Great, thank you.
Councilmember Trace.
Thank you. I didn't see any nodes around Veterans Park. I didn't know if there was any plans
It's not in the district for.
in the entertainment.
For the
part
entertainment district.
Okay.
So looking forward for just general, but we are adding some.
Okay,
in
yeah,
there
I
as
was just
well.
wondering if just events spill over from there, just to keep an eye on stuff.
The
That's
cameras that
outside,
you
yeah.
see that are on 192, I think it's, sorry, let me pull up on my phone and see if I can give you the number. Number 10, 11, and 13, which is on the south side near 192. Those are PTZ and will have the ability to turn towards the park. And so they'll be able to see, and if you've been around, trying to put up cameras in the park's very
Yeah,
hard because of
tough.
the trees. And then we have to get the data back across to City Hall. But we thought about this as well, so if we need to turn the cameras, if something were to happen in the park, we can turn those that way.
Okay, yeah, if you can just get it to where the pole's not in the way. Sometimes you put it on one side of the pole, it's still.
Right. And these are 360 as well, so what it is they have 4 sensors on the outside as a collar, and then there's a camera that comes below it and then inserts into that. And so in case the camera is zoomed in over here and something, and invariably happens everywhere you go,
Yeah.
is zoomed in here, something happens here, we're able to catch that. It may not be in as high or, zoomed in, but that still is on there.
Oh, cool.
Oh, wow.
Any other comment or discussion? Thanks, sir, very much. Thank you very much. This time we have the staff report update, CR extension request to the county.
That'd be me, Mayor.
Mr. Sturgeon.
Thank you. As you recall, several meetings back, I was directed to negotiate with the county for extending the CRA agreement. Currently, that agreement is through 2031. I've met with the county manager twice. I sent them a copy of our RMA strategic plan, and his comment is he would only bring an extension forward to his board if it was only for capital projects. To me, that's problematic. CRA has many other functions, such as property acquisitions, that would not be considered capital. He was using an example like a parking garage or something like that. Additional are BSIG grants and some of the other activities we do with the CRA funding. So I think that would really handcuff the city moving forward. So I need more direction. Would you like me to keep pursuing that or give more direction? Thank you.
Well, I'd certainly like to see you continue to pursue it and put your negotiating skills to further use. Councilmember Matheny.
I have a tread lightly feeling about it personally. I've been in strategic planning sessions at the county for many years, and they are not interested. I know they just did a thing up in the Narcousie area, but I've heard them say they're not interested in having other vampire drains on their general fund, which is what the CRA is. It's diverting dollars off, whenever they have all these different pots of money, it's just diverting money out of the general fund, and that was a concern. So I'm not surprised that that's the feeling, because I've heard commissioners say that. So, I mean, I trust Mr. Sturgeon as a delicate negotiator, but I'm not wanting to lose what we have at this time. And I think, commissioners change, things change in the future. Maybe there's an opportunity to discuss it at another time. But I don't know when he says if it's only for CIP, does that mean the extension applies only to the CIP?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
Okay. So, I don't know. I say I'm going to tread lightly.
Member Davis.
Couple quick questions. We're talking approximately 9 years, right?
Yes, sir.
Give or take. I'm assuming we haven't obligated the CRA with any of these projects we're thinking about doing past that point. I can't think of any, but I just wanted to ask.
That's correct.
Okay. And can we take a look sometime in the future at what the budget would look like without the county's revenue into it? If it was just the city's TIF money coming into the CRA? And I know you're going to need to project that to, say, 2032 or something.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, Board, if that's your direction. The other thing is, Mr. Davis, is we did do that strategic plan that RMA did, and they're actually looking at the financials now. How do we spend that money appropriately? Just the current CRA configuration. So we can certainly add that in, Board, if you'd like us to do that. Look at what it looked like if just the city was contributing their TIF.
Right. With a reasonable increase in, because now it feels like the city's now, the CRA area has kind of now come into its own a little bit. So that tax increment should have some nice increases, unless we have a recession or something that derails it. But I mean, we should be looking at, in 10 years, starting to get a nice return on those investments down the road, I would hope.
Do we have a consensus from the other members of the board to pursue that?
We're good to
Do you
go.
have a-
Thank you, Mayor.
You have a majority?
Thank you, sir.
Any other input on the CRA extension to the county?
No, sir.
At this time, we'll come to our bi-monthly financial report.
All right, that's going to be me. So I ask that you bear with me, as I am not an accountant, but I will attempt to get through this. So on our first chart, we will show the revenue and other sources. We have from the county's contribution, the $1.1+ million, as well as our operating interest, the interfund transfer, which puts us at $2.8 million. Our expenditures to date are about $1.1 million. And it's my understanding that what shows us a deficit, the 1.6, is actually reflective of unrealized gains. Excuse me. For the expenditures and other uses for personnel, operating, capital outlay, and other uses, we have 2.8 budgeted for the total year. This year we have expended thus far a little over 1.07 million, and so we have a ending balance of 1.8. A couple things I wanted to point out on your budget to actuals based on the last meeting that we had that's been adjusted by finance is that we have now included a burn rate, excuse me, I have allergies, a burn rate, and you'll see it down at the bottom right of the chart that says total expenditures and balance of 37.5%. They've also added the percentage of the year lapse, and that is on the upper right of your P&L sheet. They have removed the prior year fund balance line item from revenue to more accurately reflect the current year's financials. And that is the bi-monthly financials report.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Member Davis?
Mr. Sturgeon, does the city have any bond issues out that are rate sensitive or that are not fixed rate?
The CRA does not.
The CRA doesn't.
No, the city.
I don't think we have any adjustable rate bonds, Jeff, do we? Yeah, we don't.
I'm sorry?
They're fixed.
They're fixed, so if we see a spike in rates, not unaffected by it.
Yes, sir. We have an investment committee. It's myself, the deputy city manager, finance director, and we meet quarterly and we go through all those investment strategies to make sure. And we've all had to get training and stuff, so we look at that. And we actually use a active portfolio management company also that would notify us.
You're referring to the income side, right?
They advise us on all that for the bond.
Including the expenditure.
Correct.
Okay.
And we use bond counsel too. So.
Done? Any other input, Mr. Manzares? Do we have to take any action on that?
No, it's just a report.
Just report it. Thank you. This time we come to our members' update. Mr. Manzares, do you have anything for us?
I do not.
Mr. Sturgeon?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one thing. I was on vacation next week. I actually had a chance to go with my family to Universal tomorrow, so I'm going to start my vacation a day early.
Yeah, okay.
So you guys have a nice week, and I'll see you in a couple weeks.
Well, hopefully you'll beat all the weather coming in. Member Matheny?
I don't have anything.
Member Urban?
Nothing for me, thank you, Mayor.
Member Askew?
Nothing for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Member Davis?
Nothing this evening, Mayor.
And Member Trace?
Yeah, thank you. Glad to see the downtown project happening. Let's just, hopefully we can keep access to everyone and sidewalks and all that, so just hoping we can keep everyone moving and get that open before Thanksgiving, or is it before the Christmas holiday?
It's supposed to be before Thanksgiving, depending on weather or supply chain. It looks like everything's moving really well right now. We put a communications plan in place, and interesting, when we did that, I asked for that, and we found out that the MOT, Management of Traffic for the City Hall and the downtown had not spoken to each other. So
Conflicting at
that's
20
why you
people.
do that. You have a meeting, and I walked around the downtown today, saw a couple of our business owners, and they were complimentary of how the company's been out talking to them. And we've had a couple issues, and David Bridle's done a good job to make sure we're communicating with everybody. So we'll still have some faux pas, but we're on top of it.
Yeah, it looks like the signs have gotten
Yeah,
out there
we
now, and we're
finally-
getting movement, so, thank you.
At this time, we'll receive any public comment, and there doesn't seem to be any. Brings us to our information section. Our next CRA meeting is scheduled for Thursday, August the 4th, 2022, here in council chambers. With that, there's no other items on our agenda. We will be adjourned.